And welcome to another episode of Decatur Dish. I am Maria Moreau with Atlanta News First, joined by our media partners at Decaturish, the one and only Dan Wisenhunt here with us. And the news never stops in DeKalb County, and certainly not this week. Dan, we have a lot of headlines to get to, and I want to start by talking about a story that's really dominated national news and now has found its way in our neighborhood, down in Brookhaven, actually. So let's get into it. ICE protests happening, again, all around the country, but most recently an incident occurring in Brookhaven where what was supposed to be a peaceful protest took a sudden turn and 6 people were arrested last night.
Yes, Maria, this is going to be a long summer for everyone. There are going to be protests and there are going to be responses to those protests. The president made quite clear that he intends to respond to protests with enforcement actions. There's going to be a parade. He's getting a big military parade on Saturday, and there are going to be protests all over the country. There are going to be protests in Decatur and Tucker in downtown Atlanta. It will be something to watch. That's something we're watching. I fully expect all of these things to be coming to a city near you very, very soon, and we're gonna be busy this summer. What can I say?
Yeah, it seems to only be ramping up, and as you mentioned, this weekend especially, supposed to be another gathering for many reasons. And as we continue to watch this, we just want to make sure to emphasize to everybody, as you're reading this, as you're absorbing this, whatever side politically that you stand on with this, is just keeping in mind that if you are planning to go protest one way or the other, making sure that you are doing it in a way that protects your safety and the safety of those around you. But we will continue, of course, to stay on top of this. And Dan, I know the Decatur's team will as well. I want to talk about something really that you all have been getting people ready for quite some time here, and that is the upcoming June 17th election for DeKalb County's Public Service Commission. There's been an update with where you can and can't vote at this point, some changes to where ballots will be cast.
The PSC election's been kind of snake bit. We had a residency question with one of the candidates, and he's apparently no longer going to be on the ballot, Daniel Blackman, unless he's got another appeal, but at this point it's a little late in the game. There are some construction projects going on at our county schools this summer. As we've discussed on the show before, County School District has quite the backlog of school projects that they need to deal with. So the DeKalb County Board of Elections moved 2 polling places. Tony Elementary School is going to relocate to Kelly Lake Elementary School, and Henderson Mill is going to relocate to Warren Technical School for the upcoming election. So if you vote in those precincts and you haven't voted early, and please go vote early. This is why voting early is amazing, so you don't have to deal with this stuff. But if you're voting day of the election, please check your precincts. There should be signs telling you where to go, but check before you go. Go to the Georgia Secretary of State's My Voter page and make sure that your precinct is correct. And if you vote at those precincts, make sure you go to the new one.
And going to Decaturish.com, also a fantastic resource, by the way. You guys have laid out what you need to bring, what you should have, and general information so that when you're going to your polling location, you know who you want to vote for, and it's that much quicker for you. So, again, we're going to continue to stay on top of this, but Decaturish.com, that's where you want all of the information surrounding this election and election results that are to come. All right, Dan, talk to me about this story. New Playplace opening at what was once a popular turned controversial gymnastics studio. It's the upscale children's Playplace on DeKalb Industrial Way, and it's really signifying a new beginning for this location that was plagued by public scrutiny and legal battles and tension. Walk me really quickly through the background of that as we look ahead to the opening of this indoor children's playground.
Sure. Atlanta In-Town Stars Gymnastics used to be a real gem of a company. It was on several lists of best companies to work for, that sort of thing. It grew really fast. They moved into this new facility on DeKalb Industrial Way. The owner got into a little bit of an argument with her customers over the firing of a popular coach. She said some things on the company's Facebook page that maybe were not advisable to say if you were a business owner. It caused a lot of problems. People left because the coach went to a different gym. She abruptly closed it around this time last year in August. and the building has sat vacant. And last I had heard, before I had gotten the latest press releases, they were talking about turning it into a storage unit, which would have been, frankly, kind of lame because they spent millions on this build out of this new facility. But now this Playplace club thing, if you will, it's Otazu. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They're based in Buckhead. They're opening another branch in Chamblee. They're going to move into this space, and it conveniently includes all the amenities that Anna Santiago had built into this. It's going to have a cafe. It's going to have some spots to gather, and I think there's a monthly fee. You pay the monthly fee, and you bring your kids, and you drop them off, and they jump around in ball pits or whatnot. Would have been great if I had it, a couple of years ago when my son was itty bitty, but there we go.
Well,
Yeah.
for many
Live and
parents,
learn.
this
If you got itty bitty kids, you're gonna love it. It's gonna be great. And if you got itty bitty kids and $100 a month to join a play club, either do that or go to Chick-fil-A, whatever.
when one door
Whatever you gotta
closes,
do.
the same door might reopen in a different way.
It's
so
the summer. You got to keep them busy.
All right, let's talk about the 4th of July, Independence Day, now less than a month away. And a lot of people, every year they have their familiar favorite spots where they like to go watch fireworks and enjoy. And if that spot for you is Avondale Estates, specifically their fireworks show, we hate to break it to you, but it has been canceled this year.
They have canceled the fireworks. It's a safety issue. Apparently, fun fact, fireworks set things on fire.
No way.
Look, I'm not a Scientologist, but I believe that to be the case. Fireworks set things on fire. They had a fallout zone. They had a launch site that they previously used. For whatever reason, that's not available. They cannot find a safe launch site to shoot the fireworks. So, no fireworks this year. The good news is that Avondale Estates 4th of July parade is a real hoot. They have a lot of cosplayers and antique. It's an amalgam of all the things that make Atlanta fun in one parade. So if you really want the best thing that Avondale Estates is doing on the 4th of July, take your kids to that 4th of July parade. That's as good as it's going to get. There are going to be fireworks shows everywhere. No disrespect to the fireworks shows they've had in the past. You can get your fireworks anywhere, but that parade, you're not going to get that anywhere. I can promise you that.
Dan Wisenhunt endorsed Avondale Estates is the place to be for Independence Day.
That morning, anyway. Yeah.
That morning, at least. After that, you're on your own. All right, let's talk about the story that continues to just be the story of the city of Tucker. Talking about pickleball, of course. We said, I believe, the last episode, one of these last episodes, that it seemed like the chapter was closed.
It does.
But it never ends. City Council voting to rebid consideration of a $3 million building project that would consist of 6 pickleball courts and 6 mixed-use courts. Is that correct?
That's correct. As the ball pickles. That's what we're working with. That's the saga. This has been going on for a couple of years. I thought they were going to bid a contract. It got pulled at the last minute. There are some questions about the contractor's qualifications. There's a city election coming up. I really thought that this was going to be shelved until after the election. From a practicality standpoint, it makes sense. Funny enough, there are other things going on in Tucker besides pickleball. You might not know it, but that is what we're talking about right now. And joining us today is one of the Tucker City Council members, Alexis Weaver. She voted against rebidding the project at Monday's meeting, and she's here to talk to us about that vote and other things. There are other things that are going on in the city of Tucker.
And we'll have that after this short break.
Joining us today is Tucker City Council District 3 Councilmember Alexis Weaver. Alexis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Pickleball. Why pickleball? Of all the things, there are things going on in Tucker that I know have nothing to do with pickleball. But every meeting I go to, it doesn't matter what's on the agenda. It doesn't matter what other important issues of the day are taking place. It all comes back to pickleball. Help me understand this.
Well, I think part of the reason that it is coming up so much now is because it didn't come up enough in the early planning stages. So one of the reasons that at every meeting you are hearing from the community is because they weren't included in the first conversation. So all the way back to March 2023, when the first design proposal came in front of the council, the only folks that were sort of told about it being such a big presentation were folks that play pickleball, and they are passionate about it, and it's a great opportunity for activity and health and community building. But one of the pieces of that contract that was voted for was to have a very intentional process for designing the courts and looking into what the feasibility of the courts building the courts there was. And neighborhood and community engagement in that design was a critical component of that contract. And unfortunately, we got to October of last year, and the neighbors of the rec center, they weren't invited, and they hadn't been involved and didn't know it was happening. And that was something that, the city staff should have been paying attention to. We've had this, Parks and Rec across the board. We try to do community engagement with our plans. It's very important to me as a participatory planner that we listen to the community and really meaningfully involve them in design and discussion and planning. So we could have done that. We didn't. And so when they understood that it was, tentatively, it had been shared with the potential contractors in the last bid, that it was tentatively going to be voted on October 28th, I made sure that the folks the closest to the rec center had an opportunity to come out and speak up at public comment. And because of that, it raised awareness. There was a lot of delay and conversation about what do we do. It definitely took a lot of people off guard. I understand that. It took me off guard as well, seeing that it had been shared with, for open bid process, but not shared, back with us sort of intentionally. And so you are going to see, I think, just across the board, not just with pickleball, but continuing to see more and more people in our community showing up to meetings because they know that that is a dedicated opportunity to at least express their concerns. Unfortunately, yeah.
Wait, we could go on and on about how we got here, and I appreciate
Yeah.
you giving us the quick history.
Sure.
My question, the city has fully admitted, fallen on the sword, that they messed up on the engagement piece of this. Frank has said that a number of times. That they have tried to make some compromises. It was going to originally be 12 courts. Now it's 6 and 6.
It's still 12 courts.
But there's 6 multi-use. They're going to be able to restripe it, and for the sake of this discussion, it's a compromise. They've also added soundproofing to it, and my question is, do you think the people who are opposed to this project, 'cause I've written way more about pickleball than I ever thought I would write about pickleball in my life, but I talked to the opponents for a good long while, and I kept saying, well, what about this? No, we aren't going to like it if we do that. Well, what about this? No, it just seems every reasonable attempt to find a compromise is kind of shot down. So my question is, are the opponents being unreasonable here with regard to this project? Should they find a way to compromise to allow this project to move forward?
Well, I mean, it sounds like you've spent more time with the neighbors of the Tucker Rec Center than some of the folks at the city. So they haven't been met with to have that conversation. Their only avenue has been to say individually, hey, what can we do? This is what we believe in. This is what we think. But it's all individuals. They all agree they are not a fan of it being there. This is one of the reasons why. What does it mean to admit that we made a mistake if we're still carrying forward with the same design that was built on such a significant mistake? We had an opportunity on Monday night. We were talking about Rosenfeld and the Rosenfeld Park and the updates and upgrades to that. There was a lot of consensus on council that we should have both tennis and pickleball lines there. and as well as looking at our other tennis courts in Henderson Park. Part of this is about how we have a bigger picture discussion about our programming. Compromise means bringing all parties to the table and having a meaningful discussion where everybody gives a little bit. It doesn't mean a single person, perhaps a council member, drawing up their own design and then going to an unqualified contractor to see if they will bid. And that's what happened, and that's the design that was proposed last minute on Monday night to move forward with a rebid, is still 12 pickleball courts with lines painted on it for other uses, but not any clarity in the construction documents around materials that would also manage, for example, playing pickleball and playing basketball are two different sports, and the courts are designed differently. And so if that is something that we're going to do, if we're going to do multi-use courts, then we really need to be thoughtful about what all the material is going to be, who's going to use them. There's been several of us that have asked for quite some time about materials for use of play. We haven't gotten a policy from the Parks Department about what that is going to be. For example, soft paddles, other noise mitigation issues. But when it comes down to it, this was never what do we need in Tucker to meaningfully be able to continue to have pickleball play, to understand what the other resources for our other parks and recreation programming need to be. And really, I think we really missed this huge opportunity to take our Parks and Recreation Master Plan update, which we updated last year, and say, what does it take to fully implement this, right? That did have community engagement. It did have community input. There's some really significant projects in there that a lot of people in the community are interested in. And so we really need more of a holistic approach, which a lot of us want to do. And, you know, if you're not bringing everybody into a meaningful conversation, which hasn't happened, then I don't think you can call it compromise.
Well, let's put some pickles back in the jar and save some for the next discussion, because this discussion is going to continue for a little while by all appearances. I do want to let our viewers know I invited Tucker Mayor Frank Allman to join the show. We are working on an episode. He might be able to join us week after next. We'll keep you posted on that. We're going to hear his side of the story as well. Moving on, Juneteenth is coming up. What are Tucker's plans for Juneteenth this year?
Well, we are really lucky in Tucker to have a great community who is committed to putting on a community celebration. This is our fourth year of the Tucker Juneteenth Jubilee. Really appreciate Camille Mahdi and the Citizens for Family Activities in Tucker leading the charge on making this happen at the Church Street Green Space. We have done it every year since I've been on council. As you know, Dan, but maybe other people don't know, I have been a champion for the city recognizing Juneteenth since February of 2022 when we first set our first calendar as me being a council member. So it's gonna start at 5:30. It's gonna be a great family-friendly activity. They will always take additional sponsorships and support. Bring a picnic, lunch if you want, or go to a food truck and grab something, and just listen to some great music out on our beautiful, beautiful Church Street Green Space.
Cool. Definitely check it out. We're going to have a event preview of all the Juneteenth events coming up this week. Jim Bass is writing that for us. Check it out on Decatorish.com. I want to talk about trails because I'm kind of a nerd about this. Tucker has some interesting things going on with its trails. There's one that it goes by the cemetery all the way to Stone Mountain. It's a path trail. There are sections of it that are a little scary, frankly, especially as you're walking past that cemetery to get on to Stone Mountain. There's another section that's right by the town green, and it's really beautiful, but when you're walking on it, you can like see where the money ran out because the trail stops abruptly and then it's in a neighborhood again. Tucker does seem interested in making some significant investments in its trail infrastructure. I think there's a master plan going on right now. Talk to me, but walk me through, pun intended, the trails discussion in Tucker. What do you have and what do you need?
Yeah, thanks for that. So we do have a trails master plan and a transportation master plan from when we were started early as a city. And what we're doing this time is instead of updating those individually, we are combining them into one transportation and trails master plan. So we're looking at what the original ideas were and how we can do more with them. One of the things that's exciting to me and why we appreciate so much the voters helping us pass the most recent SPLOST is that we allocate quite a bit of SPLOST dollars to parks and recreation, and then also to trails and transportation, bikeways and sidewalks. The thing about all of these projects is they do cost money, right? So you have to design it, then you have to look at where exactly land acquisition and how that takes place. One of the things that the Trails Master Plan is going to help us do is identify those places where if we invest that money earlier or prioritize investments of certain trails, we know that that will lead to additional economic development, it'll lead to additional activity and growth that will help us increase that tax base that helps us build out some of those trails that maybe aren't in as heavily developed areas that might be more residential. So we have a great team at the city working on a couple of different areas to really try to look at how we can move some things forward. In this next fiscal year, you will see a good number of projects moving to the next phase to really focus on accessibility. They are quite pricey. And one of the things that we had really planned for, that a lot of cities plan for, is matching federal funding for trails. And at the moment, the federal funding that we have identified and received is still moving forward, but we know with the things that are happening in Washington that they are cutting a lot of funding for a lot of different things. And so we have to be really mindful and thoughtful about how we are going to implement these things over the next several years. We know that we're also losing, a lot of folks in our communities are losing their jobs. They're at risk. There is a trickle-down effect of direct federal cuts to then all of the nonprofits who are then losing additional funds and not being able to find it. And so as people in our communities are feeling squeezed both ways, we want to make sure that we can find sources of investment to help them have the strongest quality of life they can through these trails and through access, but also being mindful of what are we thinking about around taxes and how we can really balance all of those needs for the community.
You mentioned the federal funding cuts, Councilmember Weaver, and at the top of the show, we talked about some other things that are going on in our community, the protests against immigrations and customs enforcement actions going on in our communities. At the meeting Monday, the pickleball vote was not on the agenda until it was. And then at the end of a very, very long meeting, there was a pretty lengthy, tough discussion about rebidding the contract. You were gavelled at one point by the mayor because you were arguing with your fellow council member about it. We won't get into that. But we did want to talk about, in this particular moment, as we're gearing up for what, by all appearances, is going to be a very long, contentious summer in this country, how important is it to you, to other members of our local governments, that we act with transparency and engage with our constituents in good faith?
I think it's critically important. One of my areas of expertise that I work with folks on is what does it mean to be trauma-informed and trauma-responsive, particularly for nonprofits and community organizations. And I think it's really important that we recognize that a good portion of our community is dealing with a lot of trauma right now. Scarcity and uncertainty just builds on that. And so many of us, I know it's a cliche to say we are in unprecedented times, but I don't know what another word is besides that, where we have the federal government just unnecessarily causing harm and to our economy, to our communities, to people and children with disabilities, to people of color. Again, unnecessarily, right? We see the things that are happening with ICE threaten. People are afraid to leave their homes. They're not going to key activities for their children because there is no one knows what to do. I think none of us know what to do, but being separated really doesn't help us answer that. And so I think one of the strongest, most important things we can do is show up together as a community and I think to talk about and name the things that are happening. So when I think about transparency and accountability, it's important to tell the truth, the full truth, to try to be as fact-based as possible. I have my opinion, but I also have, you know, what I went through and what others have gone through. And it's important to listen to people's story and their experience because that experience is true for them, regardless of what, you know, side of anything you are on. I know when I went to one of the first 501 marches in Tucker, it was really meaningful to be out there with other people who were feeling the same way. And then as we were, you know, marching and walking in solidarity, I don't even want to call it a protest, it was a march, right? It was a moment of unity and solidarity. And we had so many people along the street cheering, honking, clapping, and it really did help us bridge this moment of feeling isolated and alone into there are people like us, there are people who have had this experience. You know, I recently heard this quote that for my own soul, I have to use words, right? Sometimes the things you say aren't going to change a person's mind directly, but there might be another person who needed to hear it and needed to know that they are being seen and that they are more vulnerable, right? I have a lot of power and a lot of privilege as an elected official, as a two-income household, and a lot of financial security. There's a lot of people that don't have that in our community. But their voice and their personhood matters just as much as mine does. And so part of what I think we need to do in this moment, again, is just speak up, be available to each other, and be community as best we can.
Councilmember Weir, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you'll join us again.
I would love to do that.
Thank you. This is the Decatur Dish Show. We tape every Wednesday at 12. We stream every Wednesday at 12:30 right here on Atlanta News First Plus. We are taking next week off due to conflicting schedules, but we're going to be back week after next. You can check us out on the Atlanta News First Plus app. Download that. It's a great way to support us and support our partners at Atlanta News First. Also, please check out Decaturish.com for all the latest news about Tucker and the rest of DeKalb County. With that, we all hope you all have a great week. If you are protesting this weekend, please stay safe. Don't get yourself arrested. It's not worth it. Stay safe. Be peaceful. We will talk to you in 2 weeks right here on ANF Plus.